I apologise for my voice, but it doesn't hurt, so don't feel sorry for me. I feel sorry for you trying to listen to it all. And first, I just want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I'm presenting, the Kabi Kabi people at the Sunshine Coast, and pay respect to their elders past, present, and emerging. I deliberately chose this title because the way and some of the people I work with look at One Health, it is more than infections, people and animals. And so I'm going to take you through quite a quick introduction to One Health, the way that I and others see it. But you'll see that there's many, many different views. I suppose that's like most things. And I do take up the challenge that Mark said, and we'll talk with this broader view about just some of the applications of One Health in real life. So first, we'll just have a quick look at definitions. And I know this is a busy slide, but I did want to put them all on one slide. And I've highlighted some of the things from the field, how I look at it. So firstly, the first definition talks about collaboration and transdisciplinarity. And you don't necessarily see a lot of people who work in One Health really taking a transdisciplinary point of view. They may try to get other sectors, or at least one animal, one human. But the group I work with, we really look at those interconnections. You'll see on the second definition, again, really starting to bring in a broader range of things. So including that all of us, humans, animals, and ecosystems need clean water, clean air, and need to take into account climate change. And you'll also see that on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, that people are starting to include, and I will too, starting to think about the soil health and other parts of health. So it can take in a lot of things, and that might also feed the cynicism that Mark talked about, is that maybe it's meaning all things to all people. But it is a way of thinking about things. So the concept, some people say, well, actually, up to the 19th century, people have always been talking about things like comparative medicine or integrating public health systems. For example, in early China, the papyrus in BC actually talked about the intersections between animals and humans and environments. And even Virchow talked that between animal and human medicine, there is no line. And he was the person also who brought up the term zoonoses. The 18 to 1900s, quite a few people, including Osler Meyer and Schwabe, actually started looking again at those links between human medicine and veterinary medicine. Again, some of them, Schwabe termed one medicine. Again, a lot of these were very much from a medical framing. But then in 2004, the Wildlife Conservation Society actually started to respond, and I'll quickly show you the Manhattan Principles, a lot around some of the zoonoses, starting to think about antimicrobial resistance, and talked about the principles of One Health, One World. The OIE, which is the organization, I suppose, in French, of animals, really, the WHO for animals, the World Health Organization, and the Food and Agriculture Organizations decided to join together and did a tripartite agreement to say, well, we really should start looking at this interface between animals, human, and environment. And again, primarily around zoonotic diseases. They all had looked at zoonoses, but this time decided to really do that more together and to also look at antimicrobial resistance. And in 2012 at Davos, they talked about One Health, and also the World Bank published a book around the economics of One Health and made that economic case for it. And in 2011 in Melbourne, where a few of you are located, we had the first International One Health Congress, and it also broadened that understanding and broadened the disciplines to be involved and really started to focus on social and behavioural sciences, but also looking at food security and food safety. But I must say, in a lot of these, the human is often still the focus of a lot of the concern. How do these interfaces affect the human or human health services? But many do go beyond that as well. Just quickly, I know there's a lot on this slide. You'll get the slide set. I'm happy for that to be shared. But this was the Manhattan Principles. They also brought in wildlife health, because often people talked about domestic animals and agriculture, but wildlife health was something, bringing in the bushmeat trade, which now, of course, with pandemics, people often talk about it, but also started to think about responses. And you'll see in 8 saying, well, don't, you're thinking about animal welfare in how we respond to pandemics. And also in here, arguing that you need to invest in both animal health and human health and that infrastructure to actually get the benefits, and including having interrelated health surveillance networks. When I talk about One Health, I know that I have to start I try to bring all of the different disciplines and peoples together in the courses I run. But we all need to start thinking about what's health systems, because there's different definitions of those. And if you don't start having a shared understanding, then it's hard to get a shared way of working together and added value. And again, a bit of a busy slide, but useful to have it on one slide. So if you look at humans, the WHO in 1946 came out with the statement about complete physical, social, mental well-being. In more recent years, people have added cultural in there, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity, and that it's a basic human right. In animal health, veterinary science actually has 5 different ways of talking about health. And one is just that they appear and behave normally. One is that they have normal biological functions, or that their body is in balance, in homeostasis, that they have physiological well-being, but also they talk about productivity, both economic productivity, if it's an agricultural animal, or and reproductive productivity. And one definition is that a healthy animal is one that grows, reproduces, and behaves in a manner which has come to be regarded as normal for its species and type. In the bottom left-hand corner, a different perspective from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspective, but from many Indigenous perspectives, that the strong link also about that connection to mind, to family, to kinship, to community, to culture, to country, is all part of health and well-being. And so a broadening of that perspective. And so if you're trying to really work transdisciplinarily, you need to take that into account. And when you're working with people who work in ecosystem health, they think of ecosystem services, that a healthy ecosystem is one that can provide, is regulating, is supporting, and the cultural aspects of ecosystem services. And again, I'll let you read what those ecosystem services are, but again, a very broad definition of health. So just a couple of case studies, and I'll run through these quickly for the sake of your ears. One, I start with the antimicrobial resistance, and Canada has tried to implement, and I have tried to find people who can tell me if there's been actual evaluations. I've been searching for these, but they really took a very broad One Health understanding of how to get a surveillance system. They looked at all potential sources of drivers of antimicrobial resistance, far broader than I've often seen. And so they have included, including abattoirs, looking at wildlife and soils, looking in aquaculture, but also in drinking water, understanding what industrial and household antibacterial chemicals are used, and also looking at a broad range of human environments and a broad range of food, companion and wildlife animal locations. We did some work in Fiji a few years ago around leptospirosis, and Fiji is unique in that leptospirosis is both an endemic as well as an epidemic. So it occurs all the time, which is a the main cycle I've shown you there, but also in floods, because it is endemic. Um, the climatic changes, so increasing floods, but also because it's in the mud and the water, people also have huge spikes in leptospirosis in Fiji. And it's a very interesting cycle because it's linked both to wild animals, and they're still trying to understand what other wild animals, but they know rodents. It is linked to companion animals. It is linked to some agricultural production, both um, cattle and pigs, but also, um, and in Queensland where I am, this was common um, in environments and in sugarcane. Wheels disease was leptospirosis from rodents. And so as you get increased push for Fiji to do more sugar production, you're actually also creating problems for the communities, potentially around sugarcane. It also has got differentiation by ethnicity, and also many people who work in agriculture and sugarcane are not covered by occupational health and safety things or parts of companies. They're often daily wage people. So it's a really complex thing to try to think about how, with a One Health approach, to work in leptospirosis and a broad range of people we had to work with, and ministries and communities to try to understand, but then also understand the prevention and management of it. Colleagues of mine at the Swiss Tropical Institute also talk about, as I do, looking at the added value of One Health. In brucellosis, it was a major problem in Mongolia. And so they looked at saying, well, if we not only looked at treating humans, but also treating the animals, because you can get problems for wildlife, for animals with their productivity and early lamb loss, etc. Does that make it a better investment case to actually do animal vaccination, which animal vaccination would protect the animals as well as the humans? And very quickly you see along here that if you adjust the black as the intervention cost, the cost of vaccinating, but if you actually just looked at the human benefit on that first column on the right of the black, there wasn't much return on investment. But when you added in the agricultural benefits, you got this huge spike in return on investment. So immunising animals had both a human and animal cost-effective intervention that was worth taking up. And for a while, Mongolia did accept that. So it can have benefits in trying to take that One Health approach. The Swiss Institute also did some work in Chad, and they found, from a veterinary point of view, they did veterinary camps for the nomads and their camels. But when they were there, they asked around childhood immunisation and found that there was very little childhood immunisation amongst these nomadic populations. And so they engaged the Ministry of Health to come out on these vaccination and animal health camps to also do childhood vaccinations. And they got a significant increase in childhood immunisation in doing joint vaccination campaigns. And that was picked up again in Chad as an intervention. But unfortunately, also a lot of the volatility that is happening in that country has meant that a lot of these interventions haven't continued. But it did show that doing the services together could actually provide added value. I also, when I talk about a social science approach to animal health, think also about understanding also people's behaviour about seeking help for animals, whether they're production or wildlife, and also a whole lot of those things around political economies of veterinary systems, as well as of human systems, the commodification of animal and human health, and a lot of there's a whole although not a large field, a lot of people who do the anthropology in animals and in agriculture and find that they don't have a lot of people doing it. But trying to bring all of those systems in. And I've also brought in animal behaviorists to try to see if we can do approaches to, say, rabies in monkey temples, etc., and with wild animals by getting humans to better read and understand animal behavior to reduce their risks and vulnerability rather than just trying to do things that may not be good for animal welfare as well. I've also become very interested in soil health. I won't go through this cycle, but soil health and soil biodiversity has both agricultural, therefore animal, environmental and human health impacts and affects climate change. And the animal-human bond is also very beneficial for both animals and humans, can also be unbeneficial for animals and humans. And so if you're looking at non-communicable diseases or looking at assisted therapy animals or animals as part of a complement to management of non-communicable diseases, then you also have to make sure that the animal's welfare and the animal's health is not compromised by trying to use them in those sorts of relationships. It has been found, and in systematic reviews, that the emotional bond in animals, between animals and humans, can have positive effects on human mental health and esteem. Animal-assisted therapy can also help in mental health, in autism spectrum symptoms, with some medical difficulties, behavioural difficulties. Companion animals can reduce risks of cardiovascular disease, as well as a strong, can help be a predictor of survival post-heart attack. They found having a pet reduced mortality of people post-heart attack by a third. So these could also be complementary to pharmaceutical things. And have a look at this lovely video that was on Four Corners at some stage, using animals to help people with depression, dementia and anxiety in old people's homes in New South Wales. And again, many people doing trials, randomised control trials to look at this. Hunger, again, food security, linked both to soil health, but also linked to environmental health and to agricultural health. Very important to think about. Soil health also is important to look at the the content of vitamins in those to also affect both animal, human, but animal to human health. And the Victorian government in its Healthy Parks strategy looked at the evidence of the link between green space, One Health and human health, and actually concluded and made the investment case of having green spaces, not only for green spaces themselves, but also because they are health promoting settings. So in summary, the way people can look at One Health can be a very broad scope, including antimicrobial resistance. And I hope I've demonstrated that to you. And there are quite a lot of things. Chris and I are part of a new venture with Carby in having a series of products, both a journal, One Health case studies, to really try to share how the added value, how people really put this into practice, not just research or frameworks, and to build up a knowledge bank, and would encourage people to look at that. And two books that I've had the pleasure to be involved in that also have got a very broad range of some of the things I've talked about One Health. And you could celebrate One Health Day on November 3. Thank you.